My child, before you step into this day carrying yesterday's worries, before you reach for your phone, replay that difficult conversation, or begin imagining everything that could go wrong, come close for a moment. There is a reason your heart has been restless. You have been trying to prepare yourself for problems that have not happened. You have been thinking about people you cannot control, decisions you cannot predict, and responsibilities that seem heavier every morning. And somewhere beneath all of that, there is a question you have been afraid to say aloud. Will God truly be with me in what I am about to face? Listen carefully. Psalm 91 is not an invitation to pretend that storms do not exist. It is an invitation to remember where you can dwell when they come. And before this message is finished, there is something you must understand about the promise of God's presence that may change the way you walk through this entire day. I know how tired you have become from waking up already worried. Your body leaves the bed, but your mind has been awake long before the morning begins. You remember the person you are concerned about. You think about the answer that still has not come. You wonder whether the situation you prayed about yesterday will be any different today. You carry names in your heart that no one else knows you are praying for. You smile around others because you do not want to explain how exhausted you feel. And sometimes, you have mistaken your exhaustion for weak faith. But hear this. Being tired does not mean you have stopped trusting me. Feeling afraid does not mean your prayers have failed. And having questions does not mean you have been abandoned. There are moments when faith is not a loud declaration. Sometimes faith is simply choosing where you will turn when fear begins speaking. That is why I want you to remember Psalm 91 before you begin this day. The psalm speaks of dwelling in the shelter of the Most High and resting in the shadow of the Made Almighty. Notice the word dwelling, not visiting, not running there only when everything falls apart. Dwelling, remaining, making my presence the place where your heart learns to stay. You have been asking me to remove every uncertainty from the road ahead. But there is something deeper I want to teach you. Peace does not begin when you finally control tomorrow. Peace begins when you remember who walks with you today. Think of a small child walking through an unfamiliar place, while holding the hand of someone they trust. The child does not know the road. The child cannot see around every corner. The child does not understand every sound. But the child keeps walking, because safety is not found in knowing the entire journey. Safety is found in knowing whose hand they are holding. My child, you have been staring so intensely at the road that you have forgotten to notice my hand. You have studied the problem, measured the risk, replayed the possibilities, prepared yourself for disappointment. But how much time have you spent remembering my character? This morning, I am calling your attention away from the size of what frightens you and back toward the faithfulness of the one in whom you have placed your trust. David understood this kind of fear. There were seasons when danger was not imaginary for him. He knew what it meant to be pursued, misunderstood, and uncertain about what would happen next. Yet he learned to speak to his own frightened heart. He learned to seek refuge in God before circumstances changed. That is important, because sometimes you are waiting to feel safe before you pray. You are waiting to feel calm before you trust. You are waiting for good news before you worship. But faith often begins in the opposite direction. You pray while your hands are still trembling. You trust while questions remain unanswered. You worship before you know how the story will unfold. And slowly, your heart remembers what fear made it forget. I am near. I am faithful. I am your refuge. There is something else you need to understand about Psalm 91. It does not teach you to spend the morning obsessing over every danger mentioned in its words. It teaches you where to place your attention, under my shelter, within my care, near my presence. You cannot begin every day feeding your fear and then wonder why your peace feels weak. What enters your heart repeatedly will shape the way you see everything around you. If the first voice you listen to every morning is anxiety, anxiety will try to interpret your entire day. A delay will feel like disaster. Silence will feel like rejection. A difficult conversation will feel like the end. An unexpected change will feel like proof that everything is falling apart. But when you begin with prayer, something inside you changes. The circumstances may still require courage. The decisions may still require wisdom. The answers may still take time. But fear is no longer sitting on the throne of your heart. That is why I am asking you to pray before you rush. Stay before you strive. Listen before you assume. Remember before you react. You do not pray Psalm 91 as a magical formula to control every event. You pray because your soul needs to remember where its true refuge is. And perhaps this is what you have forgotten. You have been asking me to protect what you love while secretly believing that everything depends on you. You have been praying for your family, then carrying them in your mind all day as if worry could keep them safe. You have been asking me for guidance, then punishing yourself because you cannot see 10 steps ahead. You have been asking me for peace, while returning again and again to the same fearful thoughts. My child, prayer is not only bringing the burden to me, prayer is learning not to pick it up in the same way when you leave. This does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop confusing love with constant anxiety. It means you do what is yours to do, and surrender what only I can carry. And if these words are describing what your heart needs this morning, you may simply write, Lord, teach me to dwell in your presence. Because there is a difference between asking for protection and learning to live from a place of trust. Daniel learned that difference. Long before the lion's den became the part of his story people remember, Daniel had already built a life of prayer. He did not suddenly discover faith when danger arrived. He had been returning to God again and again. His private devotion prepared his heart for public pressure. And this is what I want you to see. The strength you need later today may be formed in the quiet minutes you spend with me now. The patience you will need in that conversation. The wisdom you will need for that decision. The restraint you will need when someone disappoints you. The courage you will need when uncertainty returns. These things grow in hidden places, like roots beneath the earth, unseen but necessary. Prayer strengthens what the storm will later test. So do not despise these quiet moments. Do not think nothing is happening because you cannot immediately feel a dramatic change. Remain with me. Let the words of Psalm 91 slow your racing thoughts. Let them remind you that your life is not held together by your ability to predict every danger. But there is still a deeper promise hidden beneath the comfort you are seeking this morning. You have been thinking protection means that nothing difficult will ever reach you. And because difficulties have reached you, part of your heart has quietly wondered whether the promise failed. That question has hurt your faith more than you realize. So before you walk any farther into this day, you need to understand what my protection truly means when the road becomes difficult. My child, before you begin this day, I want you to notice where your heart has already gone. Your feet may not have left the room yet. The sun may only be beginning to rise. The people you will speak to today may still be sleeping. The decisions you will have to make have not yet arrived. The problems you are afraid of may not even happen. And yet your mind has already traveled ahead of you. You have already imagined the difficult conversation. You have already wondered whether the answer you are waiting for will come. You have already thought about the person you love and cannot protect from every disappointment. You have already remembered yesterday's mistake. You have already felt the weight of responsibilities that have not even reached your hands today. And this is why I am calling you closer. Do not begin your day by dwelling in fear. Dwell in my presence. Psalm 91 begins with a truth. Your heart needs more than another prediction about what will happen next. It speaks of the one who dwells in the shelter of the Most High, the one who rests in the shadow of the Almighty. Listen carefully to that word, dwells. There is a difference between visiting my presence and learning to live there. Many come to me when the storm becomes unbearable. They pray when the fear becomes too loud. They seek me when every other solution has failed. They remember my promises when they have reached the end of their own strength. But I am inviting you into something deeper. I do not want to be the last place you run when everything goes wrong. I want to be the first place your heart rests before the day begins. You have been waking up and immediately opening the door of your mind to everything that can frightens you. You check for bad news. You remember unfinished problems. You replay words someone said to you. You wonder whether you are falling behind. You think about money, family, health, work, responsibilities, and the future. Before your soul has been strengthened, you have already allowed the noise of the world to enter. Then you wonder why you feel tired before the morning has truly begun. My child, your heart was not created to carry tomorrow before you have even lived today. There are burdens you have been holding that were never meant to become the place where your thoughts dwell. Yes, there are responsibilities you must face. Yes, there are decisions you must make. Yes, there are people you must care for. Faith does not ask you to ignore reality, but faith teaches you that reality is larger than the problem in front of you. The difficulty is real, but so is my presence. The uncertainty is real, but so is my faithfulness. The road may be unfamiliar, but you are not walking it alone. This is what fear wants you to forget. Fear always tries to make itself the biggest thing in the room. It takes one unanswered question and fills your entire mind with it. It takes one difficult possibility and convinces you that disaster is certain. It takes one delay and whispers that nothing will ever change. It takes one rejection and tells you that you will always be unwanted. It takes one mistake and tries to rename your entire life. But when you dwell in my presence, you begin to see differently. The problem does not always disappear. Your perspective changes. You remember that you are more than what happened yesterday. You remember that one closed door cannot determine your worth. You remember that a delayed answer is not proof that you have been forgotten. You remember that uncertainty about tomorrow does not mean you have been abandoned today. And there is something you must understand. You cannot repeatedly feed your fear and expect your peace to remain strong. What you give your attention to will shape the atmosphere of your heart. If anxiety is the first voice you listen to every morning, it will try to interpret everything that happens afterward. A person does not answer your message, and anxiety tells you that something is wrong. A plan changes, and anxiety tells you everything is falling apart. You make a mistake, and anxiety tells you that you have ruined your future. You face a delay, and anxiety tells you that you are being left behind. You hear uncertainty, and anxiety immediately writes the worst ending. But when you begin your day in my presence, you are choosing another voice. You are reminding your heart that it does not belong to fear. You are allowing truth to speak before worry begins making its arguments. You are saying, I do not know everything that will happen today, but I know where I will dwell. That decision is more powerful than you realize. Think about a house during a storm. The wind may strike the walls, rain may fall against the windows, thunder may shake the night. But the person inside does not survive the storm by standing outside and shouting at the clouds. They remain within the shelter. They trust the place covering them. My child, some of you have been standing emotionally in the storm, while asking why you cannot feel the peace of the shelter. You pray, but immediately return to imagining the worst. You read my promises, but then spend hours rehearsing everything that could go wrong. You ask me for guidance, but refuse to rest until you can see the entire road. You ask me to carry the burden, then take it back before the prayer is finished. I am not condemning you. I know why you do this. You have been disappointed before. There were moments when you trusted people, and they failed you. There were situations you believed would turn out differently. There were prayers you expected to be answered in another way. There were losses that changed how safe the world felt. So now you try to protect yourself by thinking about every possibility. You call it preparation, but sometimes it is fear wearing the clothing of responsibility. You believe that if you worry enough, you will not be surprised. If you think through every danger, you will be prepared. If you hold everything tightly, nothing will fall apart. But my child, worry cannot guarantee tomorrow. It can only steal the peace available to you today. This is why I am asking you to return. Return your attention to me. Return your thoughts to what is true. Return your heart to the shelter it was created to know. Psalm 91 does not begin by describing the dangers. It begins by describing the dwelling place. That order matters. Before the psalm speaks about terror, arrows, pestilence, destruction, or danger, it establishes where the faithful heart remains, under the shelter of the Most High, beneath the shadow of the Almighty. Your first focus is not supposed to be the threat. Your first focus is supposed to be your refuge. You have reversed this order too many mornings. You study the danger first. You calculate what could go wrong. You examine the size of the obstacle. You measure your own strength. And only after you feel overwhelmed do you remember to pray. But I am teaching you another way. Pray before you panic. Listen before you assume. Remember before you react. Rest before you rush. Let my presence become the first atmosphere your soul breathes. David learned this. There were seasons of his life when danger was not imaginary. He knew what it meant to be pursued. He knew betrayal. He knew loneliness. He knew the uncertainty of not knowing when his circumstances would change. There were nights when he could not control what his enemies were planning. There were roads he walked without knowing where he would sleep next. But David learned something that you must also learn. He learned to speak truth to his own heart. He did not wait until every enemy disappeared before seeking refuge in God. He sought God while the danger remained. He worshipped while questions were still unanswered. He remembered God's faithfulness before the situation had changed. And that is where some of you are today. You are waiting to feel peaceful before you pray. You are waiting to feel strong before you trust. You are waiting to understand the situation before you surrender it. You are waiting for evidence that everything will be all right before allowing your heart to start. But faith often moves in the opposite direction. You come to me while you are still afraid. You pray while your thoughts are still racing. You trust while the answer is still hidden. You worship while the road remains uncertain. And as you remain in my presence, something begins to happen. Not always around you first. Within you. Your breathing slows. Your thoughts become clearer. The problem returns to its proper size. You remember that the situation is not your God. The opinion of another person is not your God. The delay is not your God. The diagnosis is not your God. The financial uncertainty is not your God. The mistake you made is not your God. Fear is not your God. You remember who sits above what has been sitting heavily upon your heart. This is why the quiet minutes matter. Do not underestimate what happens when you begin your morning with prayer. You may think you are simply sitting in a room. You may think you are only reading a psalm you have read many times before. You may think nothing significant is happening because there is no dramatic feeling. But roots grow in places no one sees. Before a tree can stand against strong winds, it must develop strength beneath the surface. No one applauds the roots. No one sees their daily growth. They stretch through darkness. They search for water. They hold tightly to the soil. And when the storm arrives, the hidden work becomes visible. Prayer is often like that. The minutes you spend with me this morning may prepare you for a moment you do not yet know is when with coming. The patience you will need when someone speaks harshly to you. The wisdom you will need when an unexpected decision appears. The restraint you will need when you are tempted to react from anger. The compassion you will need when someone disappoints you. The courage you will need when uncertainty enters the room. The strength you will need to say no to something that is pulling you away from peace. These things are formed in hidden places. This is why Daniel did not suddenly become a man of prayer when the lions appeared. His life of prayer had already shaped him. He had already learned where to dwell. When pressure came, he returned to the place his heart already knew. When people tried to use fear to control him, his faith had roots. When the consequences became real, prayer was not a desperate experiment. It was his dwelling place. My child, you cannot control every lion you may face. You cannot control every person's opinion. You cannot prevent every disappointment. You cannot know every challenge before it arrives, but you can decide where your heart will live. And that decision will shape how you walk through everything else. Some of you have been asking me to change your circumstances while I have been teaching you how to stand differently within them. You thought peace would arrive when the problem disappeared, but I am showing you that peace can begin before the answer comes. You thought you would rest when you finally understood the future, but I am teaching you to rest because your future is not outside my sight. You thought confidence would come when you became strong enough. But I am reminding you that your confidence was never supposed to depend entirely on your own strength. This morning, Release the pressure to predict everything. You do not need to rehearse every possible disaster. You do not need to solve next month before breakfast. You do not need to carry every person you love as if their entire future rests upon your shoulders. Bring them to me. Speak their names in prayer. Tell me what frightens you. Tell me where you feel weak. Tell me what you do not understand. Tell me about the conversation you are avoiding. Tell me about the answer you are afraid to receive. Tell me about the door you desperately want opened. Tell me about the disappointment you pretend no longer hurts. Prayer does not require you to hide your fear. Prayer gives your fear somewhere to go, and then remain. Do not rush away the moment you have finished speaking. Listen, breathe, remember. Let the truth become louder than the anxiety. You are not alone. You are not unseen. You are not walking into this day without spiritual refuge. And if fear returns later, return again. Dwelling is not something you do once. It is a repeated decision. When the difficult message arrives, return. When your plans change, return. When someone misunderstands you, return. When the old memory tries to reopen the wound, return. When your thoughts begin racing toward the worst possibility, return. You do not have to let every thought become your home. You can bring your mind back to the shelter of truth, again, and again, and again. This is how trust grows, not because you never feel afraid, but because fear no longer decides where you remain. Not because you know everything that will happen, but because uncertainty no longer has the final word over your heart. Not because the road is always easy, but because you are learning to recognize my presence upon every kind of road. Before you start this day, choose your dwelling place. Do not make anxiety your morning companion. Do not let yesterday's pain become today's prophecy. Do not allow tomorrow's uncertainty to steal the grace I have given you for this moment. Come into my presence. Stay long enough to remember who I am. Stay long enough to remember who you are. Stay long enough for your heart to become quiet. Stay long enough to realize that you do not have to carry the entire day at once. You only have to receive the grace needed for the step in front of you. The morning light does not illuminate every mile of the journey. It simply pushes back enough darkness for you to begin walking. Let my presence be that light for you today. Begin here. Begin with prayer. Begin with trust. Begin by placing what you cannot control into hands greater than your own. And when you rise to face this day, do not rise as someone who has been promised an easy road. Rise as someone who knows where to find refuge. Rise as someone whose peace is not completely dependent on circumstances. Rise as someone who can face uncertainty without surrendering the heart to fear. Rise knowing that when your mind wanders, you can return. When your strength feels small, you can return. When the day becomes heavier than expected, you can return. My presence is not only for the morning. My shelter does not disappear when you leave the room where you prayed. Carry the awareness of me into your conversations, into your work, into your waiting, into your decisions, into the places where you feel weak. And remember this, throughout the day, you do not have to know everything that is coming in order to walk faithfully. You do not have to control the road in order to take the next step. You do not have to silence every storm before your soul can learn to rest. Dwell in my presence. Let prayer become your first response instead of your final rescue. Let truth speak before fear writes the story of your day. And when the world asks your heart to carry more than it was created to hold, return to the shelter, return to the shadow, return to the quiet place where you remember that you are held. Begin your day there and keep returning there until your heart learns that peace is not found in knowing what will happen next. Peace is found in knowing where you belong while you walk toward it.